Hello and good morning. So this is part 3 of a three-part video series because all the tutorials and information were a little too long for one video. So if you would like to know how magic loop socks to toe up and two at a time works, 2 socks, 1 skein, stay tuned. I don't recall if I introduced myself in my last video, but I'm Aradia. I'm the resident witch and creatrix over at Aradia's Hand and Danae's Divine, where I create myth, magic, and meaning for your everyday life through art, intuition, and energy work. And this video is actually for Tuesday. I wasn't able to get it recorded and do all the other things I had to do to prepare the video, so I'm doing it today on Wednesday, and it will be available for the public 1 week from today, so a day after the first video, and part 2 is also going to hopefully go up today as well. So this is a special for every now and then, How To Tuesday, and I want to demonstrate casting on with Judy's Magic Cast On to start toe up socks 2 at a time with 1 skein. Part 2 has me dealing with 2 skeins, which is possibly easier to some, but I think that they're equal levels of easy. And this is the perfect way to avoid the dreaded sock syndrome and not have to divide your skein. So I say not have to divide your skein because some people who knit try to make 2 separate balls out of the skeins when they have 1. And they're doing that to ensure that they have the same amount on each sock. However, working from both sides of the skein also does that, and then you don't have to worry about doing weird things like dividing and measuring out your yarn and making sure it's just so, because it's actually a lot harder to do that than people realize. So, a few things about this technique. If you watch part 1, you will hear all about everything for both techniques and a few extra bits, but I'm going to focus on just this technique for this video. So, the reason to use this is because you can make 2 socks at a time with 1 100-gram skein. This is a sample skein I'll be using just for this demonstration, so it is not 100 grams, but for the purposes of making a toe, this will suffice. And then of course you don't have to divide it and weigh it out. The other reason, for other reasons why I like this technique, make sure you check out the first video, How To Tuesday. Let's talk about making socks 2 at a time, and there will, if you look in the description box below, there's a link directly to that video. So what you'll need is a circular needle with a flexible cable. This is a fixed circular, which means the needle does not come apart from the cable. You can certainly use one that is interchangeable, although sometimes it's difficult to find those sizes in the smaller sizes that are generally used for socks. You need usually a 40-inch cable, which is what this is. You could also use a 32-inch or 36-inch, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that, as you won't have enough cable to work with. And I've tried it with a 24-inch, and it's just a little too short, and it makes the whole knitting a struggle. We don't want our knitting to be a struggle. So there are some other brands other than these. These are Lykkes Caspian, and Caspian refers to the color. It is a blue-green, and I like the blue, greens, and teals myself. Other options that you might have interest in are Knitter's Pride and Addis. I cannot vouch for them because I have not used them, but those are other options that I've seen that also have a flexible cable. And of course the Lykkes. Lykkes you will see featured in my second video, and they are my go-to first because I like the durability and the look and the feel of the needles as well. And the benefit of both Lykkes and Lykkes Caspian is that if they do break, both companies are very good about replacing them. So there's that. Now these are just what you need to do the cast on. This is not anything that's included in the pattern, so you would have to refer to your pattern for the other materials, tools, and notions that you would need. Some other considerations to take into account are you need to take a little care not to tangle your strands. I explain how to do this with the 2 skeins video, but the same rule applies with the one skein. What you will do is you will turn your skein as you work. And that means that the correct strand is on the correct needle side, so they don't cross. Don't cross the streams! When working from one skein, you're going to be working from the inside and the outside, as opposed to just the inside or just the outside when you work with two skeins. And of course, it's worth considering having a contrast between your color of your yarn and your needles. I'm not doing that today, but I do have some needles linked that are kind of a sunny yellowish hue, and they contrast with a lot of different colors. And then of course any of the darker colors would contrast very nicely with any really bright colors. And this just makes seeing the stitches and where they are on the needle a lot easier. Now in person, me personally, I don't have eyesight issues so that I can't see the yarn. So if you do, that's a consideration. If you don't, you'll probably be fine. And of course, do yourself a favor and have a good light. I've linked to a type of light. It's called an Ottlite, OTTLITE, below. And you can check those out. They're supposed to be really good lights. I don't have one, but it is on my wish list, because it makes crafting, when you have less light available, a lot easier. So remember that you only work on one side of the sock with one skein, with one needle, and one stitch at a time, generally. I say generally because increases and decreases notwithstanding. So a lot of people freak out about magic loop, they freak out about the socks, they freak out about the size of the yarn and the thickness of the needle. And if you take your time and think about what you're doing, it's not hard. So don't be alarmed at the needle size. It does get easier. And as you work with these smaller needles, when you go up to larger sizes, it'll be even easier, because if you can knit on this, you can certainly knit on something larger. So first of all, I took my time to rewind this cake so that it's nice and neat. And I'll be using my US 1 2.25 millimeter, which is by Knit Picks Caspians. You'll see a link to all of those below. Now I decided to go with a smaller size because I know that that works with this very well. And a smaller, you can use anything from a 0 to a 3. And the difference in sizes of the needle thickness is going to change the density of the fabric. Those are all perfectly acceptable needle sizes for this yarn, which is called fingering, also referred to as sock weight. So and this particular yarn, which I've also linked to, is Lion Brand's Sock Ease and color Taffy. You want to make sure that you leave a good amount of slack in your yarn tail, as you'll be using it up, similar to the long tail cast on, which I'll do a video on in the future. And then when starting the socks toe up, you're not using a lot of stitches, but if you don't give yourself enough slack, you're going to run out of yarn. And also, when you wrap the yarn about the needles, you will always wrap from the bottom up with the opposite yarn side, top with bottom strand, bottom with top strand. And of course, as with all cast-ons, it will make working the first round more difficult if you wrap too tightly. So make sure you pay attention. I will explain all these things as I'm doing them. And of course, you can scroll down to see what the cast on and a first round looks like. And then also what the toe worked up looks like. Now, to see all the pictures and links that I've shared, please visit the first post in this series. And here we go. So the first little bit we're going to do is you're going to take your needles and you're going to put them parallel to each other. You do not want your cables to cross like this, so make sure that that's straight, and you're going to hold these needles in one hand. Now we're going to start with the outside strand first. We'll find where it is. There we go. And I like to unwind a good bit. So you want to put the yarn over the top needle and under the bottom needle, okay? and then you're going to pull some slack. Now this right here, even for the 20 stitches we're going to do, is not enough. So I would go towards about this length. 10 to 12 inches is a good start, and we'll just pull a little more. Of course, you can always measure if you want to be short. I'm not. I'm eyeballing it. And then you're going to pull tension, both strands here in your hand. Close your 3 fingers around the both strands. Pull tension in one direction with your index finger. Pull tension in the other direction with your thumb. And now you're going to cast on, dropping from the bottom to the top in between the needles. And you now have 2 stitches cast on. So we're going to go up to 20 or 10 on each, alternating back and forth. And if you find that you get too close to the edge, you can move. Let's see, move them off. And of course, if you make mistakes, it's cool. You just slide it, leave that first stitch on there, and just slide the rest off. See, and it's that easy. Mistakes are good teachers. And you always wrap the top needle and then the bottom. So when you've wrapped your top needle, it'll have one more stitch on it than your bottom, and that's how that's supposed to be. So if that's not the case, that means you're wrapping them the wrong direction first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Uh-oh. So it looks like we wrapped somebody different. Looks like I wrapped it twice. Okay, so that's fixed now. So we'll count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's see. There we go. And now we'll have 9 on this one. And 10. And there we go. Now, as you can see, I've got all stitches on there, and you've got your tail just hanging down. And because we're not going to work these stitches yet, I'm going to tie a very loose knot here at the edge, and this will keep that last stitch that was made with the tail from loosening. It's not made with the tail, pardon me, it was made with the other strand. So now we have this. We're going to move the skein to the other side and pull out some more. And this yarn, it looks a little rough because it's been worked over and over again. Yours will not look like that when you start, so don't worry. Okay, and remember we said this right here is not enough, so we'll need a little bit more. And that's probably a little too much. And that right there is yarn coming apart. There we go. So again, we're going to hold the 2 strands between our 3 fingers here. Pull tension the top, the index, and pull tension with the bottom. And we're going to go in the same way, where you go from the bottom to the middle, and you alternate your strands. And if you find you're too close to the edge, just slide your stitches down a bit. It looks like I have one too many on this one, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that means I will push these and take these last 2 stitches off because those were one too many. And there we go. Now, like the first one, I have the tail, it's just hanging, and if I let this sit like it does, what it will do is it will loosen up, so I don't want it to do it. But because I'm about to work these stitches, I don't need to worry about that. I'm going to address that problem in just a moment. So, first of all, we're going to turn our needles this way, and you see that we need to make sure that the yarn is turned the correct way so that the strands are hanging on the correct side. So these strands go to this side and those strands go to that side. Now, because I'm not working with these, I'm just going to push these down and out of the way. Put that there. And we're going to do like this. So we're going to take this is our working yarn, and the working yarn is attached to the skein. And I'm going to put the tail over it and hold them together. But this one will be under these fingers and the working yarn will be above, because I am a picker when I knit versus a thrower, which means I would move the yarn with my right hand. So with these stitches towards the edge but not all the way to the tip, you're going to go ahead and pull your needle, which is why you have such a long needle. And I usually like to leave about this much left over. And you're going to start knitting across. As you knit, you'll be able to drop that tail strand, but I like to knit at least 2 or 3 stitches first before I do that. And you will knit just like you would normally. Across, and as you're working the sock. When you do this technique, one side of one sock at a time, and that is, we're working the top of this sock, and usually what faces you when you're holding the needles like this is considered the top when you begin, and the wrong side is on the inside between the needles, so that's where all the pearls are living. But the back or the bottom of the sock is right here. So all of these stitches are now worked. These aren't. The tail's just hanging there. We're going to move these over. Move that over. And now we're going to slide these stitches towards the end of the needle. Now remember, we made a little knot, so we need to untie that knot, because you don't want knots if you can help it. We're going to lay the tail over the strand, put this over here, and this over there. And this is just how I hold my knitting. You are certainly welcome to hold your knitting however you feel comfortable. You just want to make sure that what you're working with is the working yarn, not the tail. And then we knit across. And while I'm an experienced enough knitter, I still don't rush my cast-ons and my setup rows. Just take my time. And if you can knit and you can purl, then you can make socks. Anything else that you choose to do, you'll learn to do as you're doing it, and it's not super fancy or really hard. As they say, it's not a race, although I do like to finish projects quickly. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this top. So now both tops are worked. And what we're going to do is turn the needles this way. So when I turn the needles this way, I also want to turn the yarn the same direction so that everything is oriented properly. Now this is now our bottom needle. Okay. And we're going to just slide this through here. And you'll be able to tell if your strands or if your knitting is too tight or your cast on is too tight, or just as you go along, when you go to slide these stitches around, if they don't slide, they're probably too tight. So just bear in mind that is important. And again, make sure we don't catch our tail. So now we can let that hang. We'll push these towards the edge just a little bit more and pull the bottom needle. And then knit across. And let me move this out of your line of sight a little bit. And there we go. We've gotten that side done, so we can slide these stitches out of the way. You move these stitches over, and we'll do it again, making sure that you have the working yarn, not the tail. Okay. And another little thing to remember is as you're doing these sides between two needles or between your needle and your cable, you might want to pull this first stitch that you work a little tighter, because sometimes there can be gaps. And the same thing with the beginning of the round. And this right here is why you want a flexible cable. It makes moving it out of the way and it not warping the stitches a lot easier. And all of the needles that I've suggested in this video, you can get a flexible cable with them. And there we go, we'll pull that tight. And so now you have the beginning of your toe worked for your sock. You will continue on as your pattern suggests, turning and then turning your skein so that this strand that's over here is on this side and this strand that's over here is on that side. So I hope this was helpful to you, that this made sense. Usually demonstrations are done with larger yarn, but I wanted you to see what it actually looks like with the size yarn and needles you're going to be doing, because that's what you're going to be looking at when you do this technique. If you have any questions, feel free under any of my videos to make a comment, and I will be happy to do what I can to help you or clarify anything. If you don't like this whole one skein business and it makes you nervous, make sure you check out part 2 with the 2 skeins. And of course, if you want to get all of the details about everything, including all of the links and all of the pictures, then you should visit my first post. And you'll see all of that goodness there. So thank you, and I hope that you have a happy and wonderful Wednesday. Happy knitting!